right, welcome to Global Voices, everybody. We're going to get out of the blue light for a second here. Today's a very special day. We have Armstead Herndon here, back at Beeson Media School. Everybody welcome Armstead Herndon. My pleasure to introduce him. Armstead came to Beeson Divinity School after a career in the military. He traveled around a good bit.
You can say it. You can say it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Anyway, he was a very faithful attender of Global Voices, and I always appreciated him being around. But I really didn't know what all was happening until one day he came in my office and he started asking me about some logistics regarding taking the mission certificate. And so I thought, okay, well, that's great. So I start answering his questions. But then finally I said, well, wait a minute. Tell me what's going on here? Why are you feeling called to do this? And he pulls out a folder that had all these things that he had experienced here in terms of missions that had piqued his interest. And he started sharing his heart for people in other parts of the world and saying that, I really feel called to do something about this. And so from there, he started going through the mission certificate program. And I had the pleasure of overseeing his supervised ministry practicum at Shades Mountain Baptist Church. So it was there that he started working alongside some people who had been there for a couple of decades. Most of them had been working for a couple of decades doing ESL, citizenship classes for internationals, as well as Bible studies. And one of the volunteers for that ministry is right here, Gene Howard. And he can testify with me that the people there immediately fell in love with Armstead Herndon. Everybody universally loves and appreciates this man for the way he loves others, including the international students. They immediately just loved him, and so he served them, he taught, and it was a pleasure to watch him serve and to bless other people. He has been a blessing to professors here, to other students, and today it's my pleasure to have him come and share about Eliza Davis George. Welcome, Armstead. Again, one more time.
All right, thank you. Well, good evening to everybody. Can you hear me? Good. About the only thing Dr. Parks left out was the fact that my being here at Beeson, we all, at some point, you have to do a CCMP. I mean, you got to do one. Yeah, you have to do one. A little uneasy about where to go, what to do. Obviously, the Dr. Parks and those in the Global Center were instrumental in helping me decide what to do and how to go about doing this. But I had met 3 Liberians who were students here. Dennis Agray, Eddie Gibson, and Moses Larte. And I doubt if anybody know those names. But Dennis Agray, when you go up to the Global Center, you'll look at the display where it says Beeson alums. You'll see a picture of Dennis there, his family, and I think they got his family has grown some, I believe, since that picture was last taken. But long story short, having known these students and needing to decide about where would I do my CCMP, well, guess what? I knew Liberians. Dennis Agray he has a mission. He works for what's called CRCA, Christian Revival Church Association. Dennis shared with me when he graduated from Beeson, he asked God to help him at least plant 2 or 3 churches in Liberia. Graduated from here, going back to Liberia, and his thing was, Lord, if you just let me plant 2, maybe 3 churches. Well, today, Dennis has planted well over 100 churches. Well over 100 churches. And not only in just Liberia, he's expanded that into some of the neighboring countries also. So having met him, well, the experience of going there for a CCMP required 2 weeks. Well, the mission certificate requires you to take a 6-week CCMP. And having again, met Dennis, met Eddie, and then actually being in school with Moses Latte before he graduated, Liberia seemed to be the right place for me to go. And again, I did stay there for 6 weeks. July, August of 2017. I wanted to go back in 2018. I broke my ankle, couldn't get out the bed. 2019, I did go back to Liberia. I went this time with Eddie Gibson. Well, that was for only about a 2-week period. And still, I'm still being pulled, and God is still always just working with me about working with the people in Liberia. So, Lord will, this year I will probably spend the entire summer with the Christian Revival Church Association there in Liberia with Dennis Agray. He's in Wisconsin now with his family, and the plan is, based on an email yesterday, we will all try to figure out a way to travel back together, back to Liberia. So him, his wife, 4 children. So and they'll bring me along this time. So, but the goal is for me to, and this is what he and I had talked about some 4 or 5 years ago. My graduating and my being willing to come back with home to his home and possibly spend, an entire summer there. And believe me, they're busy. They are absolutely busy. You may have, I don't know, you may have seen the display with my name on it, and you've seen some young men with white buckets, water buckets. I sent that simply because that was in a Muslim village in the year 2017. Some of you probably know, some of you have been told, the Muslim faith, Islam, is growing. And it's growing fast. So the whole idea about my sending that particular picture in is that Christian Revival Church Association had made contact. That's a Muslim village. And the one way that they had found to get to Muslims was with clean drinking water. So what you saw were buckets that would filter and purify muddy water. And I'm serious. I've seen this for myself, using those buckets and people having to go drink and cook with water out of streams, and they're downstream also. So the water was not clear. But using those buckets, that was the way into those Muslim villages. And it's still a challenge. I mean, it is absolutely still a challenge. My last visit there, and I couldn't go in 2020, obviously because of the pandemic. But having been there in 2019 with Eddie Gibson, and one of the first things I became aware of is the idea of the fact that Muslims are still traveling to the country. The Islam is still outgrowing and outpacing Christianity. Just jokingly about it, we talked about this, and which I think most of you know, the idea about becoming a Muslim, first of all, the man can have more than one wife. And each child that's born becomes a Muslim. So it's not very difficult to figure out that the Muslim population, how well it can expand, just because a man marries more than one woman and each child becomes it becomes a Muslim. But I got to stop talking. Swipe it. I'm trying. Yeah. But I did need to get to Mother Eliza Davis Joyce, though. Good. I certainly chose her simply because I was on the first floor looking at, there's this big globe down there. Everybody, I'm sure everybody's aware of it. And on the wall, there's pictures of individuals who have been recognized by the Global Center as missionaries and those who've done some things that are notable. Well, at the very top of that wall is Mother Eliza Davis George. How many of you have you ever looked up there and saw her? Okay. Well, I've asked graduates of Beeson also, and I don't know how long that wall was there when I got here in 2012. It had not. And I asked today. I was so thankful that the wall had not been painted over since the time that I recall it being there, because I really wanted to speak about her, and it really would have been somewhat difficult to talk about somebody that used to be painted on the wall in the Global Center. But she's still there. Even if you're upstairs, if you just look out across the railing, you'll still see her picture. I also wanted to take this opportunity. This is February, and this is also African American History Month. And with that being said, I did want to bring to your attention some notable African American missionaries. They are all females. Each and every one they are all females. And if you've ever seen these books before in the Global Center, the African American Experience and Profiles of African American Missionaries, that's where you can find everything that I'm about to share with you guys. You'll find it in those books. Obviously, I didn't count how many stories or how many accounts of African American missionaries are in those two publications, but there are quite a few. There are quite a few. I chose females, and they all have, if I remember correctly, they've all passed away at this point. You can see it, Mother Eliza Davis George. She lived to be nearly, I think she was 100 years old when she passed away. But I don't have to read to anybody in here, because if you guys can read Greek and Hebrew, I'm certain you can read English. I don't have to read anything to you guys. But a couple of things I did want to point out about her being known as a God woman. This idea of being a missionary was something that was planted in her at a very early age. She just had this desire, she just had this draw to go back to Africa. And what I have realized, and what I've read for myself, African Americans coming out of slavery in 1865, the Baptist Foreign Mission Convention that was established around 1880, their goal was to go back and reach the motherland. We're talking about roughly 15 years after slavery, after being emancipated, after being freed from slavery. People who have been former slaves, they organized, and what they wanted to do then is get back to Africa, to the motherland, because they knew that their people, their family members, and we're still talking about distant ties and everything, but they still knew that they needed to reach Africa. They needed to go back home. They needed to help the people who they so.
Sorry, y'all. A little technical issue here. Can you talk amongst yourselves? Yeah, change the setting for how long it takes.
Hey, man. You made it. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just move it forward when I need to then. Okay, okay. All right.
When
Well,
Howard is done talking, we'll get started again.
well, I don't mind admitting that you can look at me and tell I did not grow up with an Apple MacBook. I mean, when you look at me, the gray hair should give you some signal, some sign that I didn't come in the world with an Apple phone nor an Apple MacBook. So I'm still trying to navigate the challenges of using these devices. So, but thank you for your patience. But again, like I said, just reading for yourselves. She did. She sacrificed a lot. She really sacrificed a lot, and there's no time won't allow me to try to go into all of the things that were going on with her. But as you're seeing, she come from Texas. But there's one thing that really stood out about her to me, was the second paragraph, how having to try to get support for the people from the United States, and just what she went through, just to try to get, and you can imagine $200 at that point in her life was a lot of money, and it could go a long way. And the last sentence, they sent us even rowboats or whatever it took to get, and then it was just the idea of money going to Monrovia, and she was in a place called Greenville. Even today, trying to navigate traveling from one major city, and don't even talk about trying to travel to villages. There are just no roads. There are just no roads to really use. So, and they are not that there aren't major highways there. Not there aren't major highways, but back in that time, just the idea of having to travel to travel a great distance, just to pick up money for what she was trying to do there. And you'll see she had some of the challenges, and I'm going to try to address some of that, or address that at some point before I end my presentation. If you can see, when she lost support, she was convinced to marry a man just to continue the support. She prayed about it, as you read. She prayed about it. This God, what God really wanted her to do. But having done that, she still was successful. And as you see in that last paragraph there, how only one came back to help her, and this is after having met, hundreds and hundreds of individuals who came back to really assist her with the work in Liberia. It's somewhat mindful of, I think, Luke 17, when Jesus healed the 10 lepers, and a lot of times you hear, well, where are the 9? After doing so much for so many, only one really came back to assist her. But she did this all out through her life, and even into her 90s, she was still traveling to Liberia just to continue the work that she had started there. Again, I wanted to be certain that I shared some other names with some other individuals. Mother Emma B. Delaney, and she was the person who, as you'll read about the third paragraph, how she was in 1912, she drove what was called the stakes, or she started what was called the Sioux Industrial Mission in Bomi County in Liberia. She's pretty much single-handedly got this started. I have been there. I've been there myself. I've been there to see what's left of the place, unfortunately. what you see, what you're reading about, the buildings and the girls' dorm and the boys' dormitory, there's nothing, barely anything left of them right now. The chapel and the school, the only thing, the progress that has been made, and the reason why all of these things aren't there, one reason is the Liberian Civil War throughout the 80s, and there were two civil wars. And one war, when they thought it was over and they thought the civil strife had ended, a second civil war broke out. And it did more to the nation, to the country than the first Civil War did. So what I saw when I was there, the effort to actually, they built a church there. When I say there's no power, the only way you can have lights or any type of electricity in the church building, you have to use a generator. And then gas is high there. When we think gas is high here, believe me, it is extremely costly to purchase gas in Liberia. But what's left of the girls' dormitory and the boys' dormitory, from what I was told, all that hasn't been grown up and grown over, so to speak, by vegetation. What's left is what was used by some of the soldiers or some of the warlords who actually took over the school. Once they left, they didn't care about it being preserved or someone coming along later to have it that would need to use the school or anything. So what was left is walls standing, still some foundation for floors and this type of thing. And they're still in ongoing effort, and I've tried my best to be a part of that also, to try to rebuild Suyin Mission. Because what I found out that there are African Liberians all over the United States. And the reason most of them are here is because of what the training that they got at the Suyin Industrial Mission Station. So kind of some disconnects there, but that's the way it is. But I am attempting to be a part of that effort to try to restore the place. I was once approached, well, actually last year, approached by Reverend Emmanuel Wilson, who's a Liberian, who is really like the caretaker of what's left of Suyin. He had an effort in early 2020 to try to get some of the, find out the individuals who had once were alumni of the Suyin Industrial Mission. He hasn't really been able to do very much with that throughout the year 2020. So again, he and we contact one another, we're still in touch with one another. So our thoughts are to try our best to maybe use this summer, the year 2021, to somewhat pick up where he left off or we left off with our efforts late 2019 and early 2020. You'll see that Mother Delaney is a recipient of many awards and honors because of the work that she did in Liberia. Was at home in Florida when she passed away. And these are, I think there was one of these names, could have been that anyway. Briefly, I'd just like to share with you some information about the following ladies: Gladys East, Mabel McComb, well, let's start with Gladys East. Born to missionary parents in South Africa. And as you can see, South Africans decided to stop all African American missions agencies or mission efforts in South Africa during the 1920s. And again, the only African country that accepted African American missionaries was the country of Liberia. So I guess as I was trying to put this together, and I'm being honest with you, I'm putting this is the start of my putting this together is to not only use it as a tool for historical purposes, but I'll be honest with you, I come up I come up in church when we knew about African missions in the 50s and in the 60s. We were not strangers to it. What I've discovered is that at this point, in this period of my life, for me to mention certain names, Betsy Stockton and Gladys East, Mabel McComb, my fellow church members in the African American community, these names just don't, they just don't resonate with them. They just aren't, they don't know them. Now, I'm not trying to say they're not known, but I am saying that it's been my experience that these are the names of some people, and there's some more that the African American church, the African American community has somewhat lost sight or lost the vision. And I'm not trying to say every church has lost the vision. Believe me, hear me clearly. I am not accusing every church of losing the vision, but I am aware that this vision of African Americans and missions isn't as strong as it was when I was, say, a little fellow, a little boy. My church inviting Africans who they had been supporting in Africa, and the Africans would come to our church, and I can remember playing with little African children, being amazed, at their the way that they did not speak like they were from Alabama. Let's put it that way. It was really, we were just really amazed at our little African friends. And as life would have it, the idea of just supporting Africans or supporting missions, the idea of it just slowly started drifting away. And again, I'd like to try to, I'll try to address that before I sit down. But one thing that's prominent there was the National Baptist Convention, Foreign Mission Board of the National Baptist Convention, USA. In the 40s, they were really strong in trying to support, the Sioux-In mission. And today, that support isn't what it really ought to be. It really isn't. But Gladys East passed away at the age of 91, some 19 years ago. Mabel McComb, born in 1921. And she asked God, she said she went to church and she asked God to make her a missionary. As you'll see, she arrived in Monrovia the day before her 41st birthday. And she was at what's called the Eternal Love Winning Africa. There's a radio station in a compound there in Liberia. But that wasn't all that she did. She did work with them, but her main, what is she known? The thing that she's known for most is working with Carver Foreign Missions out of Atlanta, Georgia. They actually still have a school there. It's still operating the same school that Mabel helped found and Mabel helped build to teach the young Liberian children. She was instrumental in working with them, and then also opened up what was called the Monrovia Bible Institute. Next slide here. You can see her greatest joy was teaching. And she said just dealing with students who began to just start memorizing biblical passages. And another thing I need to make sure I need to be certain I bring this out. There's no, say, official language like Liberian. It's just no official language. But there are tribal languages. And the problem you have there is sometimes some tribes don't understand what another tribe is saying. They don't understand the language. So I say that to mention how the difficulties of just trying to share the gospel, share God's word. She's speaking English, and Liberians do speak English, but it was just the idea of just trying, and there are some who don't speak English. So she really had a task ahead for herself. And as you can see, you'll see in the last paragraph, when the war broke out, she had to actually leave Liberia and come back home. Not that she was ready to come back home, but and even like, and I'll just say, even today, or at least last year before last, when I was last there, you could still see railroad tracks, or what's left of railroad tracks, on some of the major roads, and some of what we would call the railroad trestle bridges, where trains would actually be able to run across, drive up under a train track, and this type. You can still see, and I'm hopeful that by the time I get back, there have been some improvements made. But you'll still see what was left of what was destroyed by Civil War, though. And so there are several memorials of individuals who lost their lives that having spent time with Eddie Gibson and spending time with Dennis Agray, several memorials have been erected, just to, I guess what you say, if you don't know, if you forget where you come from, you have no idea where you're going. And their thing is not wanting their country to be consumed by another civil war again. Viola Reddish, still another person from that served in Liberia, West Africa. The one thing that I really wanted to leave with you guys about her is she, you probably don't remember, there was a show called How Going Will Travel. Only about two people would remember that, Dr. Matthews and Jean. But it was a popular Western show called Have Going Will Travel. So, so they come up with a ministry title of Have Christ Will Travel Ministry. And Viola was a part of that, very influential in creating that ministry. At its height, as you can see, there were well over 100 people who had been involved in that ministry. Started in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, made its way over to Liberia. But she, as you see, she served there until her death in 1970, and still was serving at ELWA even at that time. Betsy Stockton, born in 1798. Obviously, she was born a slave. She got her freedom once she confessed hope in Christ by the individuals who owned her. They granted her freedom when she accepted Christ. And as you can tell, they also educated her after she had received Christ, after she had begun to follow the gospel or follow Christianity. She ended up as a missionary in Hawaii. And as you can see, it was believed that some 8,000 Hawaiians received an education because of her. And then she was only allowed to stay there for 1 year. A person that she was working with became very ill, and they both had to return back to the United States. And as you can tell, once she got back here, she just didn't stop teaching. She taught in Philadelphia. She found herself teaching even in Canada. African American communities in Philadelphia and Native American children in Canada. She died shortly after in 1865. I wanted to be sure that I put that in there, that she had been born a slave, but she emerged as a religious and an academic pioneer. Daisy Whaley. She's from Philadelphia also. And by 1969, she was on the Ivory Coast. From what I've read of her story, those words that she looks like us, I wonder would she love us? And she proved that she truly loved the people on the Ivory Coast. You see what she learned, the language, and that enabled her to be able to teach on the Ivory Coast. One thing that I really want to point out again is how about the Muslim, the strength of the Muslim community in West Africa, along that part of West Africa. You can see the numbers there, 7,989 Muslim children heard the gospel. And the results was a majority of them gave their lives to Christ. Like anybody else sacrificing and serving on the mission field, I want to add this statement that she made. She said, "Money means nothing to me. If I receive some, she uses it for God's work. If it's all gone," she said, she believed God will provide because she lived by faith. She passed away in 2007. And I just kind of want to leave you guys with running out of time. But what I discovered, and as I mentioned earlier about my experiencing as a young guy, churches who are actively working with Africans and working with foreign missions and supporting foreign missions. And to me, I wouldn't dare look at this as being, say, a one-sided thing where European Americans did not want African Americans to participate in missions ministries. I'll move to the next slide to somewhat indicate why I just don't want just blame, say, one group of Americans, so to speak, of why this thing just didn't work out. I read this book by Joseph Washington, and this is his argument that, as you can see, he's not blaming European American mission boards for not accepting American candidates. As he stated then, and I'll agree with him today, that churches and colleges and Bible schools and seminaries, that's where the African American candidates for missions work should be. This is where you have to create them. This is where they need to be real, and this is where we need to raise them up at today. And I say that because, again, being in my culture, being in my community, this isn't, and please hear me clearly, I'm not saying that every church doesn't have a strong mission program, but I am saying that there are churches that have zero mission program. And I'm speaking of churches whose names, right in the middle of their name is missionary. Right in the middle of their name is missionary, and they need to just erase it and put stationary in there, in my opinion, But, my last statement, I think that would be my last statement, the misunderstood and sometimes misguided intentions. because the work is too big. There's too much work to do, to be misunderstood, to be misguided, to hold on to old thoughts or to hold on to old beliefs and to hold on to the way things used to be, so to speak. It's just too much work to do. And if a person has not met Christ, I don't know if it's do we have to do we have to be divided in who we send to share the gospel? Do we have to be divided in who goes to the mission field? Let us go when we are prepared to go. Let us be, and then continue to prepare people to go to the mission field. So, my final questions to you all. Anybody want to go to Liberia or the CCMP? You can go with me this summer. Well, I don't think you can though. I just thought about that. The CCMPs have they not been?
International are going for the summer.
Okay. I just heard that I think yesterday. So, well, if you can't go this summer, Lord willing, if I'm alive, I'll come back and get you next year. I'll come back and get you, and we'll go over next year. I'll try to spend the summer. You go over with me, and I'll make sure you get busy while you're there. You engage, and you can come back and do the same thing that I'm doing today in a Global Voices. But I think I better need to end this.
Okay, you are dismissed.